The planet's surface was a graveyard of lost cities and fossilized oceans, shimmering under the twin suns of the dying star system. Scarith stood atop a crumbling tower, her fur catching the crimson winds, her long tail twitching in the thin air. Her kind were gone, lost to war, disease, and the slow collapse of their world. She was the last, and she knew it. For centuries, she had roamed these silent ruins, her sharp, golden eyes searching the heavens. Not for salvation, she had abandoned that hope long ago, but for a dream. An ancient legend had whispered that someday, from the stars, a being unlike any other would come. A human, a creature of flesh and thought, not bound by her world's death. In her endless loneliness, she clung to that fable like a lifeline. The ground shook slightly, a tremor that rattled the stones under her clawed feet. Scarith crouched, muscles taut. Something new had arrived. A vessel, foreign and gleaming, pierced the yellow clouds above. Fire bloomed around it as it descended, struggling against gravity. It struck the plains in a distant explosion of dust and metal. Scarith did not hesitate. Her powerful legs launched her from the broken tower, and she sprinted across the wasteland. It might be nothing, another falling machine from a forgotten war, but it might be him. The dream made real. Hours later, as the cold night wrapped the world in frost, she found the crash site. The ship was half buried, its sides charred, but its heart still pulsed with weak blue light. Debris littered the crater. Panels, wires, scraps of alien language scorched into melting steel. And then movement. A figure staggered from the wreckage, coughing. He was smaller than she expected. Fragile-looking, with pale skin and dark hair matted against his forehead. His suit was torn, bleeding precious oxygen. His wide, disbelieving eyes locked with hers across the wreckage. Human. Scarith felt her heart, long dormant, thunder in her chest. She stepped forward carefully, rumbling low in her throat, a sound of reassurance, not threat. He flinched but did not run. Instead, he slumped to his knees. Without thinking, she rushed to him. Her clawed hands, so used to violence and survival, worked clumsily but gently to seal his torn suit. He gasped as fresh air returned to his lungs. For long moments, they just stared at one another. Two beings from different galaxies, sharing the same broken night. The human spoke first, his voice trembling. Name. I'm Elias. Scarith tilted her head, ears flicking. She mimicked the sound carefully. Scarith. He smiled, weak but real. Somehow, despite the infinite chasm between them, understanding flickered to life. Over the next days, Scarith sheltered Elias in the ruins. She led him through mazes of collapsed towers and dry riverbeds, always mindful of the planet's dangers. Sinkholes, acid storms, the strange, crystalline predators that sometimes prowled the nights. She hunted food from the dying biome, her claws swift and deadly, while Elias scavenged pieces from the wreckage to survive. They had no common language, but necessity bred its own communication. Gestures, drawings in the dust, and eventually a patchwork of words taught from Elias's handheld translator. Each word was a fragile bridge spanning the gulf between their worlds. As they worked side by side, Scarith learned that Elias had not meant to come here. He was part of a deep space exploration crew, mapping the ghost systems at the edge of human expansion. His ship had been struck by a rogue meteor storm, forced into an emergency landing. He was, for all intents and purposes, marooned, alone, except for her. And she realized she was no longer alone either. At night, under the ruins of ancient towers and the cold shimmer of the dead planet's moons, they spoke in broken phrases. He told her about Earth, oceans that were alive, forests that breathed, skies that rained water instead of acid dust. She listened, enthralled, her sharp mind painting pictures she had never dared imagine. In turn, she told him about her people, the Kethari, about how they had once built cities that touched the clouds and harnessed the energy of suns, about how pride had been their undoing. Wars for resources had turned their lush world into the wasteland it now was. They fought, she said one night, her voice low and bitter. Fought until nothing left. Elias touched her shoulder gently, understanding more in her tone than her words. She didn't pull away. But the dead world was not as empty as it seemed. One evening, while Scareth and Elias foraged for supplies near the edge of the ruins, they heard the distant whine of engines. Strange lights pierced the low, rust-colored clouds. Another ship. At first, hope surged in Elias's chest. Rescue. But Scareth's fur bristled, and her ears flattened against her skull. Her kind had legends, too, of raiders and scavengers that haunted the dead systems, preying on anything still alive. The ship landed with brutal efficiency, and figures disembarked, humanoid but armored weapons gleaming under the dying suns. Elias realized immediately. These were not rescuers. These were hunters. He and Scareth barely had time to retreat into the ruins. They moved silently through the crumbling alleys, Scareth's keen senses guiding them. But it wasn't enough. A drone spotted them, a whir of metal and red light, and soon the hunters were on their trail. Scareth turned to Elias. "Go," she growled, shoving him toward a narrow fissure in the wall. "No," he hissed back. "I'm not leaving you." For a moment, her golden eyes softened. But there was no time for argument. She grabbed him and, with a surprising gentleness, lifted him into the fissure. He tumbled through to the deeper corridors beneath the ruins. Then she turned to face the hunters alone. Elias crawled through the suffocating darkness, heart pounding. Above him, the sounds of battle echoed, the roar of Scareth's fury, the staccato crackle of energy weapons. He found a way up, clambering through a half-collapsed stairwell, emerging onto a terrace overlooking the fight. Scareth fought like a storm. Her claws slashed through the air, her muscles rippling under her fur as she tore into the armored figures. But there were too many. They had energy nets, and with a crackling snap, they brought her down. Elias's fists clenched. He knew he was no warrior. Against them, he was little more than prey. But he also knew he couldn't abandon her. She had saved him. She had waited for him. She had believed in the dream. And so he acted, using a piece of wreckage as a makeshift weapon. He ambushed one of the hunters from behind, knocking the device from his hands. The surprise gave Scareth the opening she needed. With a roar, she broke free, slashing through the nets and sending the raiders scattering. Together, they drove the attackers back, forcing them to retreat to their ship. As the engines roared to life and the scavengers fled, Scareth stood panting beside Elias. Blood matted her fur, and a deep gash marked her side, but her eyes shone, not with pain but with pride. "You fight," she said, voice thick with approval. "You live," he replied, smiling through the terror still coursing through him. In the days that followed, they repaired what they could from the scavengers' abandoned equipment. Enough to send a signal, a beacon into the void. Elias didn't know if anyone would hear it, or if it was already too late. But Scareth seemed strangely at peace.